Since the early 70s, my grandfather, Fred Coulter, has been involved in the harness racing. In the 90s, my grandfather and my uncle imported a stallion from the United States to Australia, which was then stood at a stud in Victoria. So Granddad, tell us your story.
Well, we were going to stand it ourselves. Then we found somebody else that already had a stud farm. So that's what we did. We leased it to them. And after a while, which wasn't even at the end of the first season, he cheated us because he sold some shares in it and kept the money. So because of that, and then we complained to the Harness Racing Board, and they said we can't handle civil matters, and it's a civil matter. I said no, it's not. It's a stud that's registered. Anyway, so I took it away from them, and then we set up a stud up in where was it? Shepparton. Up the way. Anyway, we set it up ourselves, and we got a full book for the first year, and before the year finished they had the worst rains and floods for 100 years in Shepparton area.
Wow.
And the whole we leased a 600-acre stud farm, and we planted about 300 acres of oats for the mares to graze on, and when the floods come, it ruined the whole lot, because the whole farm was about 3 feet underwater.
Wow, that's a lot.
And that's right, yeah. And then we had to bring the horses in from the back paddock, and they had to swim. They couldn't, yeah.
Wow.
They had to swim to come down the lane, and so then, but we did serve a hell of a lot of mares, but then, we couldn't keep any mares there. We had to get rid of everything because the floods weren't going away. And so then there was another stud farm that was sold to another person from New South Wales. And so I went and saw them and stood the horse there, and that's when all the problems started, because he cheated us like crazy. We had all our mares there, and he was charging us too much for adjustment, and then because we wouldn't pay him, he sold the mares in foals. That wasn't good, was it?
No, not at all.
He sold them, and so then with all the problems that we have, going backwards and forwards with the lawyers and Harness Racing Board and everything else, the whole thing come to a standstill, because the lawyer that we had to go to a meeting at the Harness Racing Board, and the lawyer that we had, he came with us, and they wouldn't let him in, and so it went on from there. Anyway, he took on the case, but prior to that, I left something out. Before, we went and saw one lawyer, Galpally and O'Brien. They were the biggest in Melbourne, and they took on the case, and then after a while they said that they couldn't take it on any further, because the Harness Racing Board have lost all our file in a flood in the storeroom. And that was a likely bloody story, and that's what this other solicitor said. So he took it on. So when we had a meeting at the board, and he came along, and they wouldn't let him in. So anyway, afterwards he took on the case. And then what happened, he rang me one day and he said that although my file had been stolen because somebody broke into his office and all they took was my file. But he said, thank Christ I didn't take the tapes, because he had 2 tapes with a conversation with a board member and the manager of the stud farm. And yeah, that was Keith. About a month later he was murdered.
Wow.
No, he disappeared off the face of the earth. Yeah, that's being murdered, isn't it? Good night, nurse. Yeah.
And what happened from there?
So that was that. What happened from there is everything went quiet, and there was nothing else said, because of the involvement of the solicitor and Harness Racing Board all involved. They hushed the whole thing up, and that was the end of that. Nothing else was done about it. And I was going to, but I never got around to doing anything because I didn't want to get too much involved with it, because Michael's still involved with harness racing and it might upset his future in the game. So that's one of the main reasons why I never really done much more about it.
And how long did all this go on for?
How long?
Yeah.
Oh, probably 8 to 10 years or longer.
So as you've just heard, there's a lot more to this story, but we can't disclose that due to legal reasons. There was an injustice made to a man who played a big part in the harness racing in Australia.